We come to our prayers for other people. Lord Jesus, you are the King who comes in. You come into the place where we are, into our world, into our church, into our homes, and into our hearts. You come as least expected. You come to unsettle the complacent and unseat the unjust. And you come whether we want you to come or not. So come, Lord Jesus, today to those who are sick and sad. Come to those who are healthy and glad. Come to those taking great decisions. Come to those giving birth. Come to those making music. Come to those making war. Come to those making peace. Come to those who are at work this afternoon. Come to those who have found they now have no jobs. Come to those who are scared that they might have no jobs because so much has changed. Come to those who are scared that their money will not stretch as far as they need it to. You are the King, and life holds together when you are here. So we say, come, Lord Jesus, come into your world. Help us to take you with us wherever we go, so that your world becomes a better place, not just for us, but for everyone. Amen.
Chapter 8, verses 40 to 48. I will explain, after I have read this reading, why I have chosen this. When Jesus returned to the other side of the lake, the people welcomed him because they had all been waiting for him. Then a man named Jairus arrived. He was an official of the local synagogue. He threw himself down at Jesus' feet and begged him to go to his home because his only daughter, who was 12 years old, was dying. As Jesus went along, the people were crowding him from every side. Among them was a woman who had suffered from severe bleeding for 12 years. She had spent all that she had on doctors, but no one had been able to cure her. She came up in the crowd behind Jesus and touched the end of his cloak, and her bleeding stopped at once. Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" Everyone denied it. And Peter said, "Master, the people are all around you and crowding in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I know that it when power went out from me." The woman saw that she had been found out. So she came trembling and threw herself at Jesus' feet. there in front of everybody, she told him why she had touched him and how she had been healed at once. Jesus said to her, "My daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." So why did I choose that reading? It was the passage that was presented to me when I produced the very first sermon that I ever attempted. Strangely enough, this passage is part of the lectionary readings for today. And we had Ivor Mitchelmore at the square this morning, and he preached on this very subject. How strange that that should be. But that was the passage that was presented to me. How did that happen? Well, it was around about 1972. I can't get the exact date, but I think it was the early 70s. And at that period of time, we had, as the superintendent minister of the Dunstable Circuit, the Reverend Leslie Goy. One or two of you here and some listening in will probably remember Leslie. I'm sure Tina does. No, she's shaking her head. I must be older than I thought. Anyway, he was a superintendent minister at the square, and he's very astute. Like all superintendent ministers, he wanted to fill the plan. That doesn't change, does it? And he got together a few people who he thought might be interested in forming a preaching team. In fact, he formed one or two over the time that he was with us in Dunstable. And he managed to find 4 men who he thought would make a preaching team. Now, these names might be familiar to one or two here or perhaps listening in. There was Len Smith, Michael Borkett, Clive Austin, Tina is nodding, and myself. And he got us all together at the manse in Friars Walk one evening, and he put his cards on the table and he said, "Now I want you to take a service in the circuit." So we all looked at one another. How are we going to do that? We had no experience of preaching. The thing was that all of us were involved in the church in other ways, mostly in junior church, which was quite a big undertaking in those days. Anyway, he persuaded us that this is what he wanted us to do. And so he decided that that was the passage that he wanted us to obtain a sermon with. Now, strangely enough, and I'm not quite sure how this happened, but I was the first one to attempt this sermon out of the 4 of us. And he let us loose at the square one Sunday evening, and we produced this service. Now, it must have gone quite well, because he decided, after we'd taken it, that we should go around the circuit with it. We probably came here with that sermon, with that service. Now, I wasn't the only one to attempt this service, of course, this sermon. Of course, the other 3 all had a go as well, and we all shared in the leading of the service. And that went on until he decided that we would perhaps attempt another one. And so we had another service, and we took that round the circuit. And of course, as the months progressed, he decided that we were talented enough, I suppose that's the right way to put it, for us to just go out in 2s instead of 4s. And then eventually we actually were let loose, and we were able to go and take a service completely on our own. Now, this took quite a bit of time. You must realise that we were all busy in other ways. We were all married with families. We had full-time employment, and we were also involved in other areas of the church. Now, Len and Clive and Michael have all moved away, in fact moved away many years ago, but I do know that they continued with their preaching ministry in other parts of the country. Now, although it's a long time ago now, I will always be grateful to God for challenging me by becoming a local preacher and for all the opportunities that followed. And when I look back, when I was involved, as some of you here know and those listening will know, I was involved in LPMA, both at district level, local level, district level and connectional level. And I served on the General Committee for several years, and we had some wonderful times together. And I met some wonderful people during that time. Now, some of you here today and listening in will have received the current copy of the magazine Connection. It comes through the post mostly these days, and the current edition, which is the summer edition, has the title on the front, Be Bold. And I think for all of us, we have to be bold in what we are doing. And I'd just like to read a very short passage from one of the articles in this magazine. And this is what it says. You might think God has not called you in this way. You might think you don't have enough time or energy or enthusiasm. You might think you are not equipped for evangelism, or that it's not your thing. But all of us are called to participate in the life-changing work of God, and you will find that God goes with you and before you as you follow that call. Step out boldly with God. And this is what we have to do. We have been through some troubling times this last 18 months, but as we come out of this lockdown, I think as a church we've got to be bold, in fact, in thinking what we are going to do in the future, perhaps doing different things. Be bold in what we are expected to do. Now, the hymn that I chose is 470, Lord of the Years. Now, it is a favourite of mine, but at the same time, I think it's very appropriate for this occasion. It's in the section in hymns and singing the faith, of our journey with God. And so it's appropriate, I think, as I say, for this occasion. And I want to read the second verse of that hymn before we sing it together. Lord, for that word, the word of life, which fires us, speaks to our hearts, and sets our souls ablaze, teaches and trains, rebukes us and inspires us. Lord of the word, receive your people's praise. 470.